There is a kind of power that does not announce itself. You don't notice it at first because it doesn't compete, persuade, or perform. It doesn't rush to explain or defend. Yet it alters how people behave around it. Voices soften. Words become careful. Decisions shift subtly in its presence. This kind of power unsettles most people because it offers no immediate feedback. Silence exposes what noise usually hides. It removes reassurance, disrupts social rhythm, and forces others to confront their own thoughts. Many interpret this as absence. In reality, it is density. Silence, when held rather than avoided, often carries more psychological weight than speech ever could. Welcome to Mind Echoes. We upload thoughtful videos every day. If you find this interesting, subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Now, let's return to the topic. The central problem is that modern life has trained people to equate power with expression. Speaking quickly, confidently, and often is treated as evidence of intelligence, authority, and relevance. Silence, by contrast, is framed as hesitation, insecurity, or lack of presence. From classrooms to boardrooms to social spaces, those who speak the most are assumed to lead, while those who remain quiet are overlooked or underestimated. This misunderstanding creates a constant internal pressure. People feel compelled to comment, react, and explain even when they have nothing meaningful to add. Silence feels dangerous, as if it risks misinterpretation or loss of status. Many learn early that being quiet invites projection, so they try to control perception by filling every gap with words. But this strategy carries a hidden cost. When you speak reflexively, you give away psychological positioning. You reveal your intentions, emotions, and uncertainties before others have shown theirs. You reduce ambiguity, and ambiguity is one of the core elements of power. By constantly clarifying yourself, you make yourself easy to read, easy to predict, and easy to manage. Most people misunderstand silence because they experience it as discomfort. In social settings, silence interrupts the expected flow. It creates a pause where no one knows exactly what to do next. This pause is often interpreted as awkwardness rather than potential. To escape it, people rush to speak, joke, or explain. They mistake relief for connection. Quiet individuals, especially those who are internally grounded, relate to this pause differently. They do not experience silence as a threat that needs to be neutralized. They can sit inside it without anxiety. This changes the entire interaction. Instead of adjusting themselves to the group adjusts to them. The deeper issue is not whether someone talks or stays quiet. It is whether their speech is driven by choice or compulsion. Many people speak to manage fear. Fear of being ignored. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being excluded. Silence removes the tools people use to soothe these fears externally. This is why silence is so often misread. It does not advertise confidence. It tests it. When you remain quiet, others must decide how to interpret you without guidance. That uncertainty forces them to pay closer attention, and attention is the foundation of influence. Psychologically, silence functions as a container. When verbal cues are reduced, the unconscious becomes more active. Jung observed that when external structure weakens, internal material surfaces. In conversation, words often act as structure. They guide interpretation, can limit projection. Silence removes that structure. When someone does not speak, others fill the gap with their own assumptions. They imagine intent, judgment, or emotional states. These projections say far more about the observer than about the silent person. This is why quiet individuals often appear mysterious or intimidating. The mind prefers certainty, and silence withholds it. From a power dynamics perspective, this creates asymmetry. The person who speaks reveals themselves. The person who remains silent gathers information. Over time, The one who gathers more than they reveal holds more leverage. This is not manipulation. It is positioning. Nietzsche framed power as self-mastery rather than dominance over others. A person who is not compelled to react immediately demonstrates control over impulse. This restraint signals strength. It communicates that the individual is not governed by external pressure to perform or appease. There is also a neurological aspect. Human attention is drawn to what is unresolved. Silence creates an open loop. When someone does not respond immediately, the listener's brain stays engaged, searching for meaning. This sustained attention increases the perceived importance of the silent person. However, not all silence carries power. Silence rooted in fear feels different. It lacks coherence. It collapses under scrutiny. Powerful silence is regulated. It comes from an internal sense of stability. The body language remains grounded. The presence feels contained rather than withdrawn. Jung would describe this as ego integration. A stable ego can tolerate being unknown. It does not require constant affirmation to maintain cohesion. When someone can sit in silence without anxiety, they communicate psychological completeness. Others sense this intuitively. Speech scarcity also alters perception. When someone speaks rarely, their words gain weight. This is not because the words are necessarily superior, but because they are selective. The mind values what is not constantly available. Quiet individuals often become reference points. Others wait for their input rather than competing with it. Silence also protects inner complexity. Constant expression simplifies the self for public consumption. It flattens nuance. Quiet people preserve depth by not translating every thought into language. This retained complexity contributes to an aura of authority. Importantly, silence disrupts social scripts. Many interactions rely on predictable exchanges. When someone does not follow the script, others must recalibrate. This recalibration places the quiet person at the center of attention without them asking for it. This is why silence often feels like power. It reorganizes the psychological field. The uncomfortable truth is that most people talk too much because they are uncomfortable being alone with themselves. Speech becomes a way to escape internal tension. Silence removes that escape. It exposes the need for reassurance and validation. Quiet people often appear powerful because they are not outsourcing emotional regulation. They are not using conversation to stabilize themselves. This forces others to confront their own internal instability in contrast. Another truth is that silence can provoke resentment. When you do not explain yourself, some people feel excluded or controlled. They interpret your restraint as superiority. This reaction reveals dependency. Those who need constant verbal alignment feel threatened when it is removed. Silence also filters relationships. Some connections only survive when there is continuous emotional exchange. When that exchange stops, the relationship weakens. This is not necessarily a loss. It reveals which bonds were based on mutual presence and which were based on constant reassurance. There is also a social cost. Quiet people are often misunderstood. They may be labeled cold, distant, or uncooperative. Power does not always look pleasant. It often looks neutral. Many mistake neutrality for hostility. Another uncomfortable aspect is that silence requires inner order. Without it, quiet becomes unbearable. Many people avoid silence because it amplifies unresolved thoughts. To become comfortable with silence, one must confront internal noise first. Finally, silence is not a tactic to dominate others. When used that way, it becomes brittle and reactive. True quiet power is not performative. It is a byproduct of internal solidity. Without that solidity, silence collapses under pressure. The first shift is learning to pause. When someone finishes speaking, allow a brief silence before responding. This interrupts reactive patterns and reclaims choice. The pause does not need to be dramatic. It only needs to exist. The second shift is reducing unnecessary explanation. Notice when you justify decisions or emotions without being asked. Begin to answer directly. Let your words end where they naturally should. Resist the urge to soften or over-clarify. The third shift is emotional containment. Process reactions internally before expressing them. This does not mean withholding indefinitely. It means choosing timing and audience. Not every emotion needs immediate externalization. The fourth shift is tolerating misinterpretation. When you speak less, others may assume things. Allow some assumptions to exist without correction. Only clarify when misunderstanding has real consequences. The fifth shift is intentional speech. When you do speak, speak fully. Avoid hedging or trailing off. Say what is necessary, then stop. Let silence carry the rest. These shifts are subtle. They do not require personality change. They require restraint. Over time, restraint accumulates presence. Presence accumulates authority. Silence does not seek attention, yet it often becomes the center of it. As noise recedes, something else becomes audible. Reactions slow. Words gain gravity. People reveal more than they intend. You may notice discomfort, both in yourself and in others. This is not failure. It is adjustment. The familiar rhythm has been interrupted. A different one is forming. Quiet people are not powerful because they refuse to speak. They are powerful because they do not need to. They are not negotiating their existence through constant expression. Over time, you may feel less urgency to explain, less pressure to perform, less need to be seen in specific ways. The silence becomes less empty and more structured, and in that structure, something stabilizes. You stop chasing response. You stop managing perception. You stop filling space. The room responds differently, not because you demanded it, not because you asserted it, but because silence, when held without fear, has its own gravity.